It's January, so new year, new strain of that virus we're all trying to avoid. Whoa. I've got this yarn, vacuum packed to avoid moths. I've had it, I actually don't know how long I've had it. Somewhere between the ages of 9 when I learned how to knit and 18 when I moved out of my parents' house. I think it's wool, but I don't know, I've lost the label for it. I burnt it and it smelled like burning hair. There's not an inconsiderable amount of yarn. I don't know if I have enough to make a full length jumper for it, but first of all, I actually need to figure out how much of this stuff I have. Stage 1, the swatch. So to do this somewhat correctly, you need to knit a swatch in at least 15 centimeters in both width and length in whatever stitch pattern you choose. I've chosen stocking stitch once more because I'm not 100% sure if I have enough to make a full jumper with this yarn yet, let alone any cabling design. First of all, you need to knit the swatch, measure the swatch, get the gauge of the swatch before washing, weigh the swatch, weigh all of the yarn that you plan on knitting, including the swatch if you plan on knitting with the swatch itself, then wash the swatch, measure the gauge again, and measure the entire swatch once more. Wool usually grows upon washing it. Onto the design. I've decided that I want to make something like this with a small V-neck and slightly poofy sleeves, so I need to calculate the rough surface area of this design. Pause here if you want my calculations. I did a sleeveless version just in case I don't have enough for sleeves. I want this particular jumper seamed, more I want these patterns seamed. I like working in the round more than I like working on straight needles. Really, I will do a lot to avoid doing purl stitch. Seamed things have a lot more of a structure to them than non-seamed stuff. Over time, things will stretch out. If you have seams and therefore structure, it won't grow as much. Okay, I know what I'm doing. It's a jumper. It's not. Okay, I was going to code this up and have this available as a coded pattern pretty much as soon as I can. However, I have made only one non-raglan style sweater ever, and it was a disaster. And this one being an entirely self-drafted pattern, the idea of attempting to code it up with no knowledge of how these sweaters work, so nothing to base the code off of, I think it was going to go disastrously. So I'm not going to code it up. I am going to write everything down on paper. This is paper. And just sort of make notes of what I am doing, what works, what's not working, so I can figure out how to code it up at a later date. This is not going to get coded up. I started by casting on the stitches for the front, working with a bit of negative ease in rib stitch for about 1.5 inches to try and create a tight waistband. This did not work. Future attempts will do something different. I then increased it to fit from underarm to underarm. That did work. I was allowed to have both arms and breasts. I just wish that somebody had told my puberty that. Last night I did all of this. I ended up adding on 2 more balls of yarn, so I'm going through the yarn fairly quickly, but also I'm going through this fairly quickly. Every single time I knit with chunky wool, I seem to forget that it knits up fast. I was going to do more this morning, but instead I cut my hair. Right on low. If this doesn't work, it will be my fault. And then I phoned up every single family member I have individually and told them that I had to cut my hair. And it's been a pretty big day for me. I stuck in a lifeline because I am about to try and work out the V-neck pattern. It seems that I can expect that by tomorrow night I will have a vest-shaped thing. So here's hoping. The V-neck pattern itself went relatively easily. I decreased under the arms a decent chunk too to create armholes. But then I remembered that arms are also attached to the back, and that information really screwed me over. The reason why to be revealed shortly.
4 to 6 days later.
I haven't left my house in a while. I'm going kind of insane. The weather outside is also kind of gross. It can't seem to decide whether or not it's snowing or raining. And I know what you're thinking. Weather has a solution for that. It's called sleet. But it's not doing that. It's decided to make its job a lot more difficult. It is alternating between snowing and then raining. Which I think is, you know, like the worst thing it could do. Because at least sleet you're like, I understand. But I don't understand this. So, the vest. It currently looks like this. This is the front. And this is the back. And I have made both of these things, I'd say a gazillion times. Yeah, it's the biggest issue I'm having is that I have arms and a neck, which if I didn't have either of those things, it's likely that knitting would be harder, but designing something would be so much easier. The back of the jumper I have made smaller than the front of the jumper. This is because I carry most of my weight on the front, not on the back. I believe this is a normal thing, but that has left me with an issue when it comes to stitches. So theoretically it should be fine, but it isn't because of the situation here. I'm pretty sure I need to have the same number of stitches on here as I do for the straps on the back, so they match up and I can sew them together easy. However, I am unable to get that without leaving enough room for a neck. So more playing will need to be done. So I know I might not be in shot, but I also know that this is in shot, and that's what's important. So I finished this, and you can see I've seamed one of the shoulder pieces together, but that was just to see if I could get the, you know, if the armholes were in the right place. It's easier to have them stuck together like that rather than loose and having them pinned together because the pinning stretches it somewhat. So this is just what's that done, and I can take that apart very easily, which is what I was thinking of doing, because best practice with a woolen thing is to wash it, block it, and then seam it. However, I have loose stitches for the neck hole here and one, hard to see, here. I'm not going to do best practice. I have to seam it before washing and blocking it. I'll attach this to be a jumper like that, and then I will start doing the neck, and then I will figure out what my situation is for arms. I have about 170 grams of yarn here, and I now have to try and make sleeves. The thing is, I have no idea how to make sleeves. Not a single clue. So, I'm going to do some research. Okay, so I spent way too long looking at sleeves, and what I can tell you is that I still don't really know what I'm doing. I've done a bit of research. I've looked through my knitting books. Barbara Walker has an interesting method where she picks up stitches and then works in short rows until she has the full amount of stitches, which is not something I want to do. Elizabeth Zimmerman has a method, but it involves, having planned that in the first place, it involves loose stitches around, which I don't have, and I'm unwilling to go back and make happen. Instead, I found a bunch of free knitting patterns online, and they seem to have is something like that. I'm gonna work out how many stitches I have to cast on. I'm planning 3/4 length sleeves. I am going to work these sleeves in the round because I don't want to seam them. I seem to have lost a lot of the footage on the sleeve stuff, and I have no idea how. But basically, after trying the weird shape method, I pinned it together and it was incredibly uncomfy. Had no poof, but weighed 75 grams of yarn. I frogged it back, tried the Barbara Walker short row method, and that was comfier and added a bit of a poof, but weighed 82 grams. I then did a weird combo version where I decreased the sides at a weird shape and then also did some short rows, but not as many as I had originally done. It had less poof, but it weighed less and was still pretty comfy. So I pinned this together and I tried it on when it was pinned on, and this is actually comfy enough to wear. However, I need to take it apart. Not fully, I'm going to take it apart to here and reduce it by 1 round because I got it down to 79 grams of yarn, and then the rest of the yarn remaining was also 79 grams of yarn. The slight issue I am having is that I don't know if I'm going to actually have enough to sew the damn thing together. And when we're talking about half a gram of difference here and there, I can't afford to cut this yarn in the wrong place. After knitting up both sleeves, I sewed the thing together, washed it, and laid it flat to dry. Okay, so this is actually the second review I've done of it. When I finished this project the first time, I really didn't like it. This project was a failure in every way but one. I really did not like the project. It made me kind of like sad, and I felt a bit of a failure because I put so much time and effort into it and it just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And after a few days, I realised that maybe this jumper wasn't the actual cause of the pandemic we're going through, and it was just a jumper with some flaws. I'm still not the biggest fan of it, but I no longer immediately want to throw it into the sun. There was 3 points of design that I was trying to get when I was designing this, and I failed at every single one of them. The poofiness in the shoulder looks more like a 1980s shoulder pad rather than a little poof. The waist doesn't come in anywhere near as much as I wanted it to. And number 3, the V-neck. It's not as pronounced as I thought it was going to be, which is genuinely surprising. I have made V-necks before, and they've usually turned out exactly how I expected them to. So, don't know about that one. My guess is I've never worked with this chunkier yarn before, and that might have thrown off some stuff, but it's not a 100% failure. It does make me look broader than I am, and it isn't the most flattering. However, it's warm and it's comfy, and hopefully it will grow on me. Or maybe sort of being shaped a bit like a carrot will come back into fashion. I also managed to get rid of pretty much all of this yarn, which, as it had been sitting in my stash for possibly almost 20 years, is pretty good going. I learned a bit more about seaming. I also learned a new short row technique called the shadow wrap short row, and while not used particularly successfully here, it is now my new favourite style of short row, and I will have a link in the description below to the video that I used to teach myself this new technique. I'm not going to code up this pattern because it's terrible, and if you really want to make a jumper like this for yourself, I recommend you listen to the previous sentence. Hopefully in a few months' time I will have created a better pattern that I will then code up. In the future, if I manage to create a pattern that would work better, I don't even know if then I will be able to go back and fix this particular jumper. The process of making this over and over again and then seaming it over and over again did damage the yarn quite a bit, and I'm not 100% confident that this yarn could take another beating like that. It's warm, it's comfy, it's a jumper, and I'll carry on wearing it and it will be, well, fine. Does it really need to be anything more than that? If you like this video and would like to watch more of them, please like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. You can follow me on Instagram at KatieIsHereNow. If for some reason you'd like to support me financially, you can buy me a coffee on Coffee. This won't get you anything. If you don't want to support me at all you have to do is stop watching this video and don't watch any of my other ones. Bye! I'm a dumbass. Maybe someone out there really wants to cosplay as a warm businesswoman.